Welcome to Component.Studio 2. Today I'm going to show you a little bit about how to design a standard deck of playing cards. We're going to cover a few different concepts in here. This is our complexity level 4 example. So if you find that this is too much for you, go back to the earlier examples and then you'll be able to catch up. But this is playing cards. Today we're going to cover things like inline icons, block level conditions, and style inheritance. We're also going to use simple tables as we have in the past, but we're going to do it in a more advanced way, overlaying multiple simple tables together to make our design. So without further ado, let's get into it. First, we'll create our game. We're just going to call it playing cards. And we're going to, let's go create a data set of playing cards. Sure. And edit that. And we want to import a CSV here that I've made previously to make this go a little faster because there's lots of data entry and you don't want to sit here watching me type. So we'll go ahead and just import that quickly. And you can see I've created a row for all 52 cards. I didn't create one for the Joker, but you get it. All 52 cards are here. We've got the names of them, the values of them, the letter, if there is a letter associated with it, and then also the color that is associated, an image, which I have just done some labels at this point. We need to import some images to actually make that go, and then the name of the suit as well. We will use that in a couple different places. Let's get into this. First thing we want to do, besides importing the data, is let's create some folders for the different types of images that we need here. So I'm doing spades, so we're going to import the spades, all the different things that we need for spades. So that's going to be the king, queen, and jack of spades plus the spades suit symbol. So we'll go ahead and hit all those. You'll note that I'm using SVGs here. Now, SVGs are kind of tricky. The renderer behind the scenes, it turns this into a raster image, but it's only able to do that based on the size that the SVG tells it is. So it's not going to try to scale it up to some funky size. So if you want your SVG to be big, to be bigger in the system, you want to scale these up before you import them into Component.Studio, and it won't change the size of the file, but but in the header of the SVG file there is a thing that says what size it is. And so you'll note here that we've got our king, queen, and jack are all kind of small. They're 195 by 266 pixels. So these are going to look a little pixelated because they are just kind of they have a weird small size associated with them. Now I could scale those in Illustrator or Affinity Designer or something of that nature, but I just wanted to demonstrate what that's going to do when you see it in here. Because the rendering engine behind the scenes is a 3D rendering engine, and it cannot read vectors. It only reads bitmap images or raster images. So it's going to convert these from SVG into a bitmap before it starts rendering. With that out of the way, let's talk about a feature that you need to know about. This little icon right here, if you click it, it'll turn green, and that tells Component.Studio that this name right here can become a tag in the system. So tags in the system is used for styles. So like if I made a font style or text style called, let's say, red, where it would turn the color, the font color red, I can just wrap that like an HTML tag around the text. But I can also use icons or images as icons in the system. By turning this inline icon on here, it will create a tag for this thing as well, and thus we can use those inline in the text, and you'll see that in just a minute. So let's go ahead and get our other suits in here, hearts. And I think what I'm going to do here is just fast forward this portion of the video so that you don't have to watch me create each one of these individually, because it's just going to be boring for you. With that out of the way, we can get to this. So we need to modify our spreadsheet here a little bit, our data set, I want to set this value to be a different type. Right now it's text because by default everything is text. I want to change the column type here to be a number so that it will actually be a number when Component.Studio reads it. It can do validation this way too. So for example, if I change this 5 to a 5, it's going to not like that very much because it doesn't know how to deal with that. So it shows that little error there. If you click into the 3 dots, it says 5 is not a number. Amazing. So if I change it back to a 5, now it knows what to do with that. So that's changing the column type is really good for Component.Studio to be able to validate that the data that is imported in there is correct. So I'm going to do the same thing here with these images. I typed in these variables here because I knew what the file names were that I was going to upload. So I could just say images.filename.url is going to get me what I'm looking for. So if I typed all those correctly and I imported the correct files, now when I change this column type to images, it should show us, all the little icons next to each thing so that we know that we got the appropriate image associated with each card. With that out of the way, let's go over to the design. So we're going to create a design, and we'll call it playing cards. And I created things a little bit out of order this time for a reason. We're going to go with poker deck, we're going to go up, and we only need one back. The reason I created them out of order, I went with creating a data set first, is to show you that you can actually select a data set here. You don't have to go with create a new data set from the get-go. So there we go. I'm selecting a data set. We're going to create a design. We now have our design, so I'm going to go ahead and go into there. And we're going to have to build some styles this time that will use inheritance. And I showed a little bit of that in the last example for ad hoc inheritance. You can actually have built-in inheritance as well with these styles, so let's show that quick. First, I'm going to get rid of all of these styles that are built in. We won't be needing any of those. So then we'll go ahead and create our own styles here. We're going to create one called small. And the only property of small is that it is going to have a font size of 75 pixels. Then we are going to create another one called large. And you'll never guess that the only attribute here is that it's bigger than small. Then we're going to create black. And its property is that it is, in fact, black in color, which is the default font is always black anyway, but it's good to specify it here. And we're going to use inheritance. And how we do that is we go down to advanced here and we type in inherited from, and we're going to actually select inherited from small, or we could have it be large, but I'm going to go with small. By default, it will inherit all of the properties of small. So if we change something else, maybe the font family of small, we're using the default font right now, but let's go change that quickly and go over here to small, and let's close that to make it a little easier to see. So go over here to font family. We'll change this to ERRATA. Can you see how that was slightly different than it was before? And so now when I go up here to black, it's going to also be ERRATA. And then we should also go back, let's go back to large and use ERRATA there too, so that we're using the same font everywhere. So now whether we inherit from large or small, we're going to be using ERRATA in black. Now we have one more that we need to create, and that is, of course, red. So let's go ahead and do red. And let's go down to advanced, and we will inherit from small again. So that makes it very simple as far as, getting our sizing correctly. We also need to put a color in here. And for this one, we're going to use CA0C0C. And again, you can always use the color picker. I just happen to have a specific color in mind that I wanted to use, so I just typed it right in. Okay, so we've got our styles set up. Pretty simple, but the big feature here that we're showing off is, of course, the inheritance. See how small is inheriting from nothing, but red is inheriting from small, which means that red is this size using a specific font because we're inheriting from that parent. So we've got our styles in place. Let's go ahead and start working on our design now. let's rename this one to top left. So we're going to work on the top left corner of this design right up here. I think we just probably need just some text up there because we're going to use inline icons right in line with the text. So we don't need an image. We just need text. So let's go ahead and position this in here. I'm going to turn on the outline so you can see that we've got that outlined text area. We're going to set the width of this to be 100 pixels, which will get us exactly what we want here. We just want to have this corner area. I could set a height too, but it's not relevant because we're not going to have anything that goes longer than just a couple of characters here. So we're done with that part. Let's go down to the text area here. And in text, we are going to grab our row letter. I'm going to paste this in here. Notice how there's nothing up here? That's because this one doesn't have a letter. We're looking at the 10 of clubs. It has a number. So we're going to do row letter or row value. And so if there is no letter populated, then we will use the value instead. So now you can see that. So we're doing something a little fancy there, getting different data depending on which one is available to us. The other thing that we want to do here is, regardless of whether it's a letter or a value, we want to display the suit. And how we do that is we can click on icons here. Remember when we were in the image manager, we turned on this little thing to create icons out of our images. And so that will then appear in icons right here. So if I click that, now I have an icon, and I would like to display, let's just take clubs for example for right now. We'll just put clubs in there, and you can see it is now showing the 10 of clubs. We need to be even fancier than that because we need to dynamically change the suit and therefore the icon type by just, the data from our data set. So here's how we're going to do that. It's going to be pretty fancy. We go into row and we collect suit, and now we replace the word clubs with suit. And so now it's going to be the 10 of clubs or the 10 of diamonds or the 10 of hearts or the, oops, I should have gone to spades there, 10 of spades. So there you go. So now it is dynamically changing this tag based on a variable that we're getting out of our row, which is, I think, pretty sexy. This little slash here, by the way, means that we don't have an end tag. So let's say we wanted to make this red. We could say red, and we'd put an end tag over here of red. And so now it is, oh wait, no, that's an icon. Sorry, I should do that on the text. We can't change the color of the icon with that. So there. Now we've changed it to red by just doing that. So normally you always have an end tag when you're doing any kind of style, but for icons, you don't have an end tag. You just put that slash right in the tag itself. So now that I've demonstrated that for you, let's actually change the style here. So we're going to go over to text formatting. And by default, it's got body in there. That was the style that we deleted. We don't need that. We could apply red like we just did a minute ago. But what we're going to do is we're going to do this dynamically. So we're going to go over to row, and we're going to click color, and we're just going to put that right in that field. So now, if we're on a spade, it's going to be black. But if we're on like a heart, it'll be red. So then the other thing, I want to set this to be a horizontal alignment of center within this box. That way the heart is placed directly below our number here. So now I can just go up to position and size and turn off our outline, and we've got ourselves our corner. The top left corner. And then we are done, I think, with that corner. So let's go ahead and duplicate this. We'll duplicate it to face, and we're going to change this one to be bottom right, and this one will be bottom right corner. And we're not going to change anything about this, the layer. We're going to change the layer group by going in here and rotating 180 degrees like we did in the last example. So now we've got our suits in both corners. Very simple, very straightforward, and we're done with our corners. Now we get into the more complex part of cards. The corners of regular playing cards are very simple. It's just a suit and a number or a letter. But when you get into the middle part, there's all kinds of crazy things that can happen. You could have an image in there for the face cards. You could have varying configurations of grids for where the different icons are going to be placed. We're going to work on that next. And this is going to get complicated, but it's totally doable. Let's go ahead and create ourselves another layer group. We're going to call this one center, like so. We're going to deal with the center image first. So let's just slide in here with image. Let's call this like large center image. Okay. And we need the image here. Let's actually pull in from our row. We will go to image. We'll paste that in there. And so now we're getting our large center image. Of course, this particular card doesn't have a large center image. So let's go to the Jack of Hearts as an example. So here's our Jack of Hearts. It is in where we want it to be, but it's not quite the right size. You can see how we're overlapping here a little bit. We need to resize that just a little bit. So let's do proportional by width, and then let's move it down a little bit. So I'm going to show you that you can do a little bit of a formula in here. 20. So there you go. So you can actually do formulas right in here. You don't have to just do a variable. You can add to the variable. So if I wanted that to be a little bigger, I can, go a little further. We also want to only render this center image in a couple of scenarios. So we talked about this last time, this render this layer, and we can do a formula in here. So we're going to do that, and it's going to be bigger than we have done before. So we're going to do row.letter equals k, or row.letter equals q, or row.letter equals j. So we're doing a little comparison there. Now we can do, oh, did I do something wrong? Oh, forgot to put this equal sign right there. So good, it told us that we had typed something inappropriately. There we go, we've got our letter in place here. And if we go to some other card, let's say the 9 of spades, nothing is going to get displayed. But if we go back to, like the Jack of spades, it will get displayed. So that's all good. We can do this fancier also. So right now we're doing this. I'm going to leave that there. We're going to get rid of it before all is said and done, but I'm going to show you a different way that we can do this same kind of function. And if we go into, but we're going to use a function instead, to calculate this. So what we're going to do is in list. So how that works is we do in list, and in here we would do if row.letter is in the list of k or q or j, then it will be true. See how we're basically doing the same thing that we did up there. We're just doing it a little bit more tersely or shorter, so that it's easier to understand what's going on. So we're gonna, I keep clicking out of that. Let's, there we go. And so now we're still getting that same thing going on. We've got the Jack of spades, but if we go over to the 9 of diamonds, for example, it's gone. It's a little more fancy, but it's shorter because it's fancy. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody how that worked. Now we're going to move on to, now let's do a grid. And for that grid, the easiest way to do grids in Component.Studio is to use simple tables. We're going to call this one 2x4 because it's going to be a 2x4 grid. So very simple. Anyway, you can call it anything you'd like, but that's what I'm going to call it here. We're going to go with 187 by 110, and our width is going to be 450 by 900. Now, I played around with this to figure these out. In this particular grid, I happen to know that's the configuration that we want. We are going to then close that up, go to table cells, and we're going to change this from 2x3 to 2x4 because that's what we're trying to deal with in this particular situation. So now we have to deal with our individual cells. And if you look at playing cards, they have all kinds of different little positional elements depending on what kind of card it is. So we need to basically apply all that funky logic, and we're going to do that over a series of tables here. And the tables will overlay with each other to get the correct result. So for this particular 2x4 grid, we're going to go in here and we're going to do something we haven't done before. And this is called a block conditional. Bracket % minus. So bracket % is creating a block, and so the end of it is % bracket. So now you can start typing in here. But the reason we're going to do a minus sign in here is that if you put minus on the two ends of the block, it will get rid of all white space. On this side, it's all white space before the block happens. So if I put a number of spaces in here, they'd all go away. And if you do a block or do it on this side, then it'll get rid of all the white space that you type after it. So like if I type a carriage return, that will get ignored because I put this in here. Now I realize this is getting really deep at this point. We're right into programmer land. I'm not expecting you to know how to program, just be able to copy these kinds of examples, because they're out in our documentation. There's lots of these kinds of examples. And like I said in previous video, if you want to do something fancy, you don't have to be a programmer. Simply reach out to one of our communities, either on Discord or Facebook, and we will help you figure out what you want to do. So in this case, in this block, I want to say if row.value is greater than 3 and row.value is less than 11, then we want to do something. And with a block, you need to end the block. And how you do that is, again, we create this little bracket % minus thing. We put that in there. And we call this end if. So up here, we did an if. And down here, do I have a period there that shouldn't be there. Up here we have an if, and down here we have an end if. So that's our block. So inside of our block is where we're going to actually make some magic happen. And here is where we're going to do row.suit. If the value is between 3 or is greater than 3 or less than 11, then we're going to display the suit in this position. So you can see right here, it is displaying the suit because we're a 9. But if we went to, let's say, a jack is 11, its value, so it's not going to get displayed. Likewise, if we go down here to a 2 of diamonds, it's also not going to get displayed because we're greater than 3. So we would have to go to a 4 if we want it to get displayed. So that's what we're doing here. We're just creating some conditional logic and deciding within the cell. We're not using the render function because we have to decide within our cell, are we going to display this cell or not? So let's go down here to text formatting, and we're going to change our style here from row.color. And again, we could get this out of our 3 dots, but I'm just typing it in here. And large. And remember what I said in the last video, this one, you can combine multiple styles here and the last one wins. So row.color is going to be red or black, depending on which suit we're talking about, which is inheriting from small. But because large is coming after that one, it is overwriting small and saying use large instead. So if I were to put this back here, like so, we're back to small, and if I put large in front of this, it's going to lose because small is inside of row color, not there. So I'm going to put large at the end so that I can overrule what small is saying. That's some style inheritance that we talked about in the last video to a little degree, and now we're getting a little more advanced in this video. So hopefully that makes sense. There's a whole section in the help about how style inheritance works and lots of different ways that you can use it. If you have questions, again, Facebook or Discord. Let's also, while we're here, change our alignment. We're going to want to center these things inside their individual grid. So hopefully all of that made quite a lot of sense. Now we're just going to copy and paste this into the various positions in our grid and change some numbers. So in this one, It is still 3 and 11 that where we're going to display the suit. In this one, we need, if it is equal to 9 or it's equal to 10, we're going to display this one. So we're going to paste those two in, and let's go to a 9 or 10 example so that you can see those getting displayed now. Right there, good. And then we're going to go into the third one, and we're going to do 9 or 10 again, and 9 or 10 again. This last one is actually going to go back to what the first ones were, and so I'm just going to copy and paste out of those. Boom. And so now, if we go greater than 3 or less than 11, so if we go to like a 5, now it's going to display just those from the grid, right? Pretty straightforward, I think, other than this block logic. This is going to be the part that screws you up, but understanding that we've got different values turned on or off, it should be pretty straightforward, pretty standard. So if we look at the 10 of spades, that should be just like the 9. All of those are going to be turned on. The difference is going to be that we're going to add a couple extra ones from another grid for this one. So that is our first grid. That's the 2x4 grid. The only thing left to do here is obviously we got to turn off these lines because we don't want those in here when we're drawing out a table. So we're going to turn off all of these separators like so. No more separators. Can't even tell that I'm using a table to do this anymore. We've completed that grid. Since we've already set up this grid with all of our formatting and everything, it's probably easiest to just copy this grid. So I'm going to just duplicate this and copy it into the center, and we're going to rename this one. This will be a 1x2 grid. So then we want to change the position of this grid just a little bit. So we're going to go 299 to 334. We're going to do the width at 225 to 450. Then we need to go into the table cells, and we're going to change this to be we want a 1x2, right? I said that already. Okay, so there's our 1x2 grid. You can already see kind of what's going on here. So we need to just go in and change our values though. So this one is going to be, actually I'm going to start down here and copy these because this is very similar. Copy this one and put it up into here because it's an equal. We want it to be 7, equal to 7, or equal to 8. So because we're not on a 7 or 8, that disappeared. Let's go ahead and switch over actually to a 7 or an 8 so that we can see what's going on. We can see that one's being drawn now. Let's go to an 8. Should still be drawn. It is. Good. So now let's change our value for a 2. And this one, it's only going to appear if this is an 8. So if we're on here, we get rid of this part. We don't need the or anymore. So now this will appear on an 8, but if I go back to a 7, then it's missing. So you can kind of see where we're going here with our grids, right? Let's build another grid. We're done with this grid already. We did the 2 cells in there. So we're going to duplicate it to the center again. This time we're going to do a 2x1 grid. So we go over here to position and size, and we need to resize this thing again. 186 to 447. Then we do 450 to 225. And then we need to change our table cells again. This time we're doing a 2x1 grid. So now we need to go in and change our values again. So this one is, if this is greater than or equal to a 6, we're going to show it. And if it is less than or equal to 8, we will show it. So we've got that one in place. And then over here, we want this one actually to be the same thing. So I should go back here and just copy this out of here and paste it into this one. And so now they're there. So if I switch this to an 8, there we go. We've got our full 8 pattern going now because it's using different elements from 3 different grids to display the pattern. Pretty cool, right? Okay, so we've got 3 grids done. We've only got 1 more to do. We're going to copy we should copy our 1x2 for this one because it's pretty close. So we'll copy the 1x2, and this time we're going to make a 1x3 grid. And so we need to go in here and change our positions and whatnot one last time. Let's see, 299 to 222 and 225 to 675. Okay, we got that going on. Good. But we are going to go here and make this a 1x3 grid. And then we are going to go, we need to stay in there. We need to do our cells. So our first cell is going to be, if it is a 2, or it is a 3, or row.value equals 10. So there's 3 different circumstances where this particular one will show up. And so because of that, let's go to a 2. Now we can see something isn't right. Oh, because we have some other stuff in here that we haven't got rid of yet. So 2 or 3. So if we go to a 3 there, and if we go to a 10, 10 is way up here. Okay, we're getting there. We've got to turn off some stuff yet, which is with these extra cells. So this one, if it is a 1, or it is a 3, or it is a 5, or row.value equals 9. So this one's a little different. And then we need to go back up to the 1, copy that, and paste that down into the 3 position. And I have done something horribly wrong somewhere. So let's see which ones are displaying the wrong thing here. Debugging is always part of the problem, right? So that would get rid of something for us. We have something wrong in this cell. So if its row.value is greater than, this should be an AND. That is the problem right there. That should be an AND, and then this one here should also be an AND. So we want it to only display if it's between those 2 numbers, not if it is one of those 2 numbers, because we're using greater than, not equal to here. Okay, so that's why we've got our stuff. So if I go up here, all of our 10s should look right. They do. Our 2 looks good. Our 3, let's move into our 3 area here. 3s look good. All right, and 4 looks good. Yeah. Okay, 5 is looking great. Exactly how you'd expect. 6 is looking really good. Nice. Okay, 7s are right where you'd want them to be. 8 is just an exaggeration of 7. Good. 9 gets a little bit more carried away. Right? And then we get into our ace. So we only have the 1 dot in the middle there for each of the things. Good. Our jack looks like that. Very good. Then we're into our kings. And then we're into our queens. So we have officially made our deck of cards. With this, we have covered a number of more advanced topics than usual. We did inline icons and tags. We did block level conditionals with a function or without a function. I showed you the in-list function. We have style inheritance 2 different ways, the ad hoc style inheritance as well as doing it up in the style editor itself. So there's lots of really good stuff in here. And then we showed you tables, using multiple tables as grids, overlaying on top of each other. So that's a pretty funky and fancy use of the tables as well. So I hope that was useful to you. If you want even more advanced content, don't worry. We have one more video in this series. The level 5 example is coming up next. Thanks for watching. Bye.